Welcome, Robert. Today we've got Robert Wickham, who's a venture partner with Synthesis Capital. Thanks so much for joining us today, Robert.
Thank you, Raghu, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Look, very much looking forward to this one. You have one of those interesting, eclectic backgrounds of some of the people we've interviewed on here. Could we start off by telling us a bit about your background and what drew you to venture capital, especially in this healthcare and innovation space?
Sure, happy to. So look, my story began on the other side of the planet. I grew up in a small island in the Caribbean called Trinidad and Tobago, left there at a tender age and did my undergraduate and graduate degrees at MIT in rocket science, and then did an MBA at Harvard. Started my career in management consulting at Boston Consulting Group. That's where I got to learn really strategy and how businesses run and operate, the fundamentals of business. From there, I went on to do a variety of different things. As you alluded to, I did a startup airline, was part of the founding team in London for a startup airline. We sold that to EasyJet. Did a tech startup in Boston. We sold that to Oracle. Spent some time at Oracle. Left Oracle when my tribe came over to Salesforce and was at Salesforce for the past decade. And during that period, I did a variety of roles at Salesforce, but one that was really impactful was breaking ground for Salesforce's $50 million corporate venture fund here in Australia. As the listeners may know, that Salesforce has a pretty active corporate venture fund. At the time, we didn't really have a presence in Australia, so I led the effort to build that out. And during that period, it's probably about 8 years ago now, got to know the founders of the medtech actuator, Buzz Palmer and Vishal Kishore, and realized that they were building what has become an incredible platform that, coming up to a decade, has worked with over 100 companies to accelerate them, as the name suggests, hyper-focused on medical technologies, so deep tech applied to health. And now it's an incredible story. More than 75% of these companies are still accelerating and making progress. They're growing as a cohort as 51% IRR. 15 of them are in market right now raising capital. Many are moving towards an exit. One, with some luck, is going to have an IPO in the next month. It's an incredible story. So I saw an opportunity to join the team to build what we consider to be the Y Combinator for health in Asia Pacific. Those that are familiar with that model, bringing together venture development with the medtech actuator, with early stage risk capital, the lifeblood of every early stage venture, to unlock the potential that is in this area right now. So I've spent my career building businesses, building companies, building teams, and now I'm really excited about the opportunity to build a platform to accelerate the next generation of impactful companies in this part of the world.
Fantastic. Now, you've also had, a background in professional sports, so obviously very motivated and driven to achieve things. How does that translate to the type of people you're seeing lead companies right now? Is there a correlation between that in terms of what do you think is driving success in these styles of ventures as well?
I love that question. Mainly because I see sports as a wonderful metaphor for life. In fact, when I've had a bunch of people over the years, and I always gravitate to athletes. And if for some reason you were an elite athlete, that's a major positive check in my book. Why? Because to be part of a team, to know how to win together, more importantly, how to lose together, how to learn from failure, how to wake up every day with that mindset of how do I work on the fundamentals to be better today than I was yesterday, to know that those 1% factors really matter. But more importantly, that it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. One of the things, I used to play a lot of cricket coming through, aspired as a young Caribbean West Indian to play for the West Indies. And you realize as a batsman or as a bowler, particularly as a batsman, you have to be true to your process. You can't go into the innings thinking about, I want to score a century, because you are no longer in the moment, in the present moment. So I translate that to a startup founder. You have to be true to your process. What are you going to do? Yes, you have the bigger picture. You want to build an enduring, impactful company. But what are you going to do today? What are the vital few things that you have to do today? And then to have the resilience to wake up tomorrow and continue to grind and continue to march. I was just spending some time on LinkedIn yesterday, and a pretty impactful post came into my feed, and it was the picture of Alcaraz in that seminal moment when he was 2 sets down. He was trailing 3-5 in the 4th set, and Sinner had 3 championship points on him. And he just focused on one shot at a time, one ball at a time. Yeah. And we all know that he is now the French Open champion. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a powerful message for every startup founder, that you're probably going to have more ups, more downs than ups, but you have to have the resilience to keep moving forward.
It's very interesting. Like, this may seem a different type of analogy. I just saw this, I think it was like an interview with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And when he was young, someone was asking him, well, he had this vision to be the best weightlifter, bodybuilder. How many of these reps do you do? And he goes, I just do one. What do you mean you just do one? I just do one. So every single part of his brain was just focused on just doing that one component.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting that
staying in the moment.
Correct. While also having that end goal.
And that's really challenging to do right now. We're on a journey to build this platform that we are incredibly passionate about. And you can get ahead of yourself. You could start thinking about weeks, months, days from now. But the discipline to focus on the vital few, that process-driven approach, is what I think is really important.
So then what, in relation back to synthesizer, if you could have like a potential glamorous story of hanging around with Brian Lara and, world famous cricket players and these. So what sort of drove that? I know what motivated you to get into the industry, but what do you think now describes what Synthesis Capital does and what's setting it apart from other VC firms or venture capital organizations?
Yes. So Synthesis as a fund, we're an early stage venture fund. And what I mean by early stage is our thesis is to invest in the best medtech companies early in their life, pre-seed, seed, Series A. Why? Because that's the time when access to capital is vital for these companies, right? The analogy I like to think about is everyone loves picking ripe fruit, but very few people want to spend time in the sun planting the seeds for those trees to grow, for those fruits to bear. We see ourselves at Synthesis as being the ones rolling up our sleeves and planting those early seeds, pre-seed, seed, Series A in those companies. We also think that our point of difference is the partnership that we have with the medtech actuator that gives us proprietary access to this incredible pipeline of innovation of these companies that are now coming from Australia, Singapore, and Japan. So it's a pan-Asian footprint. 3 centers that are leading in their own right in terms of innovation, particularly for health innovation. And we're building, more importantly, connective tissue with global centers. I spend a large part of my adult life in Boston. I go back there frequently for the work that I do at MIT, my alma mater. I'm one of the trustees there. And if you're familiar with that precinct, that is a beehive of life sciences and health, and the opportunity to connect our portfolio with that precinct, for whether it is for capital when they need further needs, or for collaboration, or for working with some of the thought leaders there, is a really powerful point of difference.
And he uses this term inclusive flourishing in terms of part of your ethos. What does that mean?
Inclusive flourishing, it's the mindset that you can bring together impact and returns together. In fact, actually, we think that you cannot get outsized returns without looking for companies that are going to have outsized impact. One of the things that has drawn me to this category is the fact that there is a quiet health crisis brewing. If you look at the escalating cost of healthcare, if you look at the continuous aging population in most precincts, Australia, Asia, North America, but most importantly, if you look at the rise of chronic health disease. Did you know, Raghu, that 43% of Australians have at least one chronic disease?
Yes.
So if you're sitting in a bar having a conversation, that's almost 1 in 2. So if you don't have something that's chronic, chances are the person that you're speaking to
has something that's quite jarring when you put it that way, right? Yeah.
So the opportunity to play a role to address that crisis and deliver returns to our investors is incredibly powerful.
So part of it is also like purpose-driven investment as well. So how do you decide which technologies to venture on Prac? Because I know you'll go, from early stage life cycle businesses to longevity or even climate adaptation. What's driving that philosophy?
Yes.
And it's a primary combination of the societal benefit as well as return. Or is there a weight you're going towards then in terms of what's determining what's pricking your interest in these organizations you're past?
So let's be clear. We're not an impact fund. We wake up every day with a clear sense of purpose, but at the same time, we know we have a fiduciary responsibility to our investors to deliver outsized returns. So we make investment decisions based on identifying companies that we think are going to outperform. What does outperform mean? Particularly in this market, global day one. They're tackling big problems. We talked about chronic disease, so we're looking for companies that are going after hypertension, heart disease, women's health, neonatal health, longevity, etc. So big macro problems that does not differentiate where you are on the planet. But at the same time, we look at the quality of the team. At the end of the day, we're trying to answer two fundamental questions. Is this a significant opportunity? And is this founding team, is this the team that can get it done? Do they have the chops, the execution, the IP, and the capabilities to continue that march that we talked about prior?
And how do you go about assessing that?
Well, we go through a diligence process. One of the things we have at our disposal is the benefit of the medtech actuator. So by design, the medtech actuator every year will screen a certain number of companies to participate in the program. Order of magnitude, it's about 20 companies in every location. So there are 3 primary locations, as I mentioned prior: Australia, Singapore, Japan. And those companies will sit in front of a committee of experts, a panel of experts. The actuator brings together an ecosystem of over 150 partners that cut across strategic multinationals like Johnson & Johnson, Boston Scientific, teaching hospitals, research facilities. Those partners lend their expertise in screening those companies on the way in to validate that their proposition really is compelling and can work, frankly. But at the same time, we get to know those companies because the program is 12 months long.
The accelerator program is 12 months long.
And at the end of the day, you're investing in people. So you spend 12 months with a founding team. You get to see them at their best, and you get to see them at their not so best. You get to know what they're good at, and you get to know what they're not that good at. You get to know where their strengths are and where they need help. And that asymmetric bit of information gives us the opportunity to do extended diligence on these companies. So that's the opportunity to really screen, watch, be patient, and then build conviction to invest.
Now, when that conviction is established, you've used the term venture catalyst.
Yes.
As well, across some of your materials. So what does that really mean? Because, various companies will say that in terms of venture catalyst as well. But how do you actually help the ventures beyond the capital?
Yes. So we think that venture catalyst to us is the bringing together of the venture development that's by virtue of the medtech actuator, that programmatic approach, those 12 months that the companies spend in that environment, surrounded by teams of experts going through sprints with the dosing of capital to help them achieve particular milestones. Those two things are equal and vitally important parts of the coin that help these companies catalyze and progress.
Yeah. And any examples of ones that have actually gone through this process? You may not be able to name particular names, so that have really gone through this process and have been scaling up to the point.
Absolutely. So I mentioned earlier that the actuator has been in market now coming up on 10 years. So that's a long time. And during that time, we've seen over 100 companies come through. Some of the more exciting ones are one's Melbourne-based company that's delivering what's referred to as a lab on a patch. So you may be familiar with a continuous glucose monitoring device, a CGM. Think about that form factor, but being able to multiplex against any biomarker within your system. So the first one they're going after is drug delivery. Why? Because when you go into a hospital, the state of the art today, if they dose you on a drug to ensure that you don't get an infection, is they do a blood draw every 2 hours. Chances are in between those blood draws, your levels could be oscillating, and you can be underdosed, overdosed, have bad outcomes, and so forth. If you've got a continuous monitoring capability, akin to continuous monitoring a server within a data center, think about how more effective that might be to ensuring that patients don't have bad outcomes. That startup has been with the program for over 5 years, actually came out of the program 5 years, accelerating. We've seen over a 300% markup on their progress. They're now going through clinical trials, and we're very excited about their possibilities. Another one is building AI-powered wearable devices for first responders. So imagine showing up to an accident site and the first responder can put on their eyewear, and using facial recognition, they can identify that this is Raghu and pull up your electronic health records in real time and understand that you're allergic to penicillin. So make sure that we don't give you that in the moment to make things worse. And I can have a real-time link with the ER to say, prep this situation. We notice he has an artificial hip, so you're going to have to stabilize him on the way in. Make sure that you have everything ready. Think about how effective that is for the first responders. If they need to have instructions from the primary physician, they can do that as well.
Are you learning as you go? Because you obviously are dealing with some of the most cutting edge, innovative things there as well. It's been quite exciting as well, dealing with, especially from some of the founders, some of the technologies you're dealing with as well. Any ones like, apart from those two, anything that's particularly exciting you about these ones? So any ones you've seen that you think are really out there or going to make a big impact?
Well, the first one I talked about prior, I think that's incredible, and we have big expectations for that one. You know, I joke with colleagues that part of our mission is to identify and catalyze the canvas for medtech, right? If you look just in Australia ranks incredibly high on the IP creation index. Not so much on the IP commercialization index. One of the reasons for that, my hypothesis, is the limited supply of early stage risk capital. That's the intervention that we're going after there. Back to that orchard analogy, if you want to have fruit, you have to have fertile soil. And in order to have fertile soil, you need to put fertilizer into the soil early in the life of these companies. So that's what gets us excited. That's the possibilities that we see ahead and why we're bullish about this opportunity.
And your team's based across Melbourne, Singapore, and you've got some focus on Asia Pacific. Why is this region strong for you?
Couple of things. One is, if you think about the locus of innovation, we see that migrating from the west towards the east, from North America to Asia. A large part of the world's population is located right here. So some of those demographic challenges that we talked about prior are resident right here. Aging population, rise of chronic disease, escalating healthcare costs. But at the same time, we see some favorable tailwinds. So when you think about the cost, there's a cost arbitrage as well to do clinical trials in this market. It's probably about, last I checked, probably about 20% cheaper to run a clinical trial in Australia than it is in North America. It's a much more capital efficient market as well. And then, of course, the raw materials are incredibly rich. The teaching hospitals, the research facilities, why do you think that you see so many multinationals, healthcare multinationals, locate themselves here? In Australia alone, the access to the R&D tax credit is a huge incentive to do fundamental research in this market. If you can get 43 cents on every dollar back for doing your R&D work in Australia, that's a significant reason to at least locate some of your facility in this market. So you put all those things together, and we see a compelling thesis.
Now, about 40% of global healthcare spend is expected to come from Asia Pacific in the next decade. So how are you now positioning yourself to leverage off that?
Well, I think that's because that's inherent in the Pan-Asian strategy that we have built that cuts across Australia, Singapore, and Japan. And we will continue to expand into Asia as the pull factor comes with the medtech actuator. You know, the fact that we are tightly coupled, not exclusively, but tightly coupled to the actuator, it's obvious that we're going to look and invest in opportunities where the actuator has a significant presence. That's Australia, Japan, Singapore today. India is the next frontier. And not only do those markets represent centers where startups will be born, but it also represents markets where those capabilities will be consumed.
And have you already started exploring India?
We have, yes.
And where do you see, because I remember, look, I had worked for a company called IBIS for many years ago, and there's a forecaster who ran it, Phil Riven. So it's like a very famous forecast. He had said, I'd asked him in 2006, are you going to invest in India? He goes, no, we'll probably do it in 2024. So why? Around about that time, you know, the purchasing power will start increasing, the internal market will be large enough. There'll probably be a reshift, and he did outline. There'll probably be a religious sentiment. I don't know how he picked it into government that's affecting policy, but you're also going to be in a position where global markets will start coming into fruition in there as well. So he was actually quite direct.
Yes.
So I think it's quite exciting that you're actually looking at that right now.
Yes.
I also, one of the stats I heard about India was there's about 10,000 villages that are going to turn into small cities.
Yes.
In the next 25 years or so.
Yeah.
So I've got a bit off topic, but how do you think that's going to start looking at in terms of the market for healthcare as well?
Yeah.
Because it's almost to the point where I'm not sure how fully understood it is in Australia in relation to the propensity or the growth potential out there as well, especially in health tech or medtech as well.
Yeah.
So what have you found from your initial, like, I guess, analysis?
So it's early days for us in India. Our approach is to follow signal and to be led by the gravitational forces in the market that pull us. What do I mean by that? So if you think about how the actuator has expanded to date, started in Australia, founded by Vishal and Buzz. Just to share a little bit about their background, Vishal is a pioneer and health innovator. He's a Harvard-trained M&A lawyer, started his work doing structuring work for startups, and then played an instrumental role in building out intervention capabilities here in Victoria. So was part of the founding team in Launch Vic to really underpin the success of the growing startup ecosystem here right now. He was also Deputy Secretary of the Health and Human Services in Victoria. So really deep understanding on the health side. Buzz is a PhD in orthopedic surgery and a multi-health tech entrepreneur. He's built and sold multiple businesses, and now he runs the actuator. So, and he's actually located in Singapore. So started in Australia, and very quickly the Singaporean government saw what was going on, and have well established that health innovation is a priority for them, and invited the actuator, the medtech actuator, to locate in Singapore. That was 3 years ago. And what's incredible is in that time, the center of gravity is almost now equal between Australia and Singapore. So you can see the velocity of companies that are coming through and the level of innovation that's taken place. Last year, the Japanese government did the same thing. They wanted to figure out how to supercharge their ecosystem, ran a process, and invited accelerators from around the world, including Silicon Valley, Australia, and Asia. And we're deeply proud to say that the medtech actuator was successful in that process, which reinforces and underscores the level of work that's being done. And they've just taken in their first cohort of companies in Japan. So ecosystems are important. You have to have the multiple pieces of the puzzle working together, one of which you got to have research facilities, teaching hospitals, venture capital, but you also have to have the appropriate level of government intervention, because there are some big checks that need to be written. There's some policies that need to help unlocking the level of innovation. So back to your India question, we are making sure that those pieces are working and reinforcing each other before we go big into that market.
Yeah, very interesting. Now, for founders, innovators who are in this deep tech or regulated markets, any advice you'd want to give them right now?
Well, I'll go back to the sporting analogy. One is stick to your process, with the caveat that continue to fine-tune and know that you have a good process. One of the reasons Alcaraz was able to win was that he had good shot-making ability, right? His process was one shot at a time, but if he didn't have the fundamental skills in order to execute on that, it wouldn't matter, right? So that's one important consideration. Building and founding a company is hard. They're going to be ups, they're going to be down. You want to make sure that you surround yourself with people that can help you on the journey. That's one of the reasons we think companies that come through the accelerator perform at that rate that we're seeing them right now, because they're part of an ecosystem that they can lean on, whether it's lawyers who can help them with this, with the securing of their IP, whether it's clinical experts that can help them navigate the clinical trial pathways, whether it's subject matter experts that can help them get their specific technology just right. Driving a company can be lonely, but it doesn't have to be a lone job. So oftentimes founders might think they have to do everything themselves, but finding ways to connect with force multipliers that can help you go faster is going to be important.
And what are some of those force multipliers?
So force multipliers that we talked about are people that are subject matter experts in their own right. They don't necessarily have to be in your company. You don't have to bring them onto your payroll. But being in that environment, in that ecosystem where you can lean and get help from them is going to be important. So we think that's what we bring as a point of difference as an investor. We're not just providing vital money, but at the same time, we're providing connectivity to these force multipliers.
And on the other side, who's investing in your fund? Or what's the style of investor coming? On the other side, who's the style of investor coming into your fund?
Great question. Yeah. So in general, we are getting strong interest from people who understand the thesis, recognize the opportunity around health, and want to be part of the journey. And those typically fall into three buckets. One is friends and family, as you expect, people that want to be there on the foundation of building something special. Two are family offices and high net worth individuals. So we have seen good interest from people that have built medtech companies and exited and realized that they want to ensure that future generation of founders can have access to capital a lot more readily than they did. And then we're also, interestingly enough, getting good interest from strategic multinationals. We're raising in multiple jurisdictions right now. We're raising in writ large Asia, so that's a combination of Australia, Singapore, Japan. We're raising in North America. We're raising in the Caribbean, from where I'm from. I go back there multiple times a year now, and I've been pleasantly surprised by the reception and the interest level that we've gotten from all of those geographies.
And how about the future? Where do you think the next cohort of investors geographically may come from?
So we're playing a long game, and we are raising our first fund now. We're marching towards our first close in the next few months, and then we're going to start deploying. We're actually quite anxious to deploy because why? Because there's a rich pipeline of companies coming through the accelerator that we know are going to be impactful. Some of them are, with some luck, going to have an exit in a reasonable time frame. So the opportunity to distribute back to our investors is something that we're particularly keen on doing. And then the next set of investors we think are going to come primarily from the first set of investors, where that's inherent in our approach. But we are building relationships far and wide. So we welcome the opportunity to, as we continue to scale the size of our fund in subsequent funds, to talk to institutions and to some of the North American endowment funds.
And what sort of feedback are you getting?
Oh, very positive. Very positive. In fact, we're very excited by the feedback that we're getting right now.
Yeah. And I mean, just in relation to your investor thesis or the style participants you're able to get to participate in your investing in, when you're saying it's generally good, what are you saying is good?
So we have approaching 30 LPs right now. So that's frankly very exciting right now. We know it is a tough fundraising market. It's been a challenging macro for the last couple of years. So the opportunity to see, I come from a sales background. You don't have anything until you have a signed order. So when there's commitments coming through, that's real validation of the thesis. When you see also, and one of the ways we achieve that is by just having people spend time with the companies and see the capabilities that they're working on, and they can draw a line between that and maybe it's a family member that has ovarian cancer and knows that this startup may be able to help. And maybe if they may not be able to help this family member, they can help someone else. Or maybe it's someone that had an unnecessary C-section and has complications now and knows that the capabilities of one of the startups that's allowing you to monitor the health of the baby during delivery so that no one needs to have an unnecessary C-section. Or maybe it's someone that knew that one of their loved ones died unnecessarily from a staph infection because they were underdosed with vancomycin. And now, with the capabilities of one of our companies, that no longer needs to happen. So that level of conviction, you can realize that, to the earlier point, you can have impact and returns at the same time.
Correct. And in terms of startups that want to pitch to you, how do they work?
Well, they can find us. We'll put our contact details in the show notes, I'm sure. But we're open for business. We're looking for startups that fit our mandate and our thesis. But for the most part, we'll be looking in the first instance to the startups that are coming through the actuator. So I would encourage, just to tie this back to your earlier question, if there's a startup, a medtech focused startup, and medtech to us is everything other than molecules, right? So we're not in therapeutics, we're not in drug delivery. We think that's a very different game, requires a completely different capital profile. So devices, wearables, implantables, bionics, diagnostics. If you are with your team and you're scratching your head thinking about, how can we go faster? How can we make more progress? I'll encourage you to consider checking out the medtech actuator. And by virtue of that, we will see you.
Great. And then after that process, as you start interviewing them, I'm just trying to get an understanding of, because the medtech actuator has an array of startups.
Yes.
And are they all given access to you and you let them do that? Okay, sure.
Correct.
And, the startups will be at different phases of capital raising cycles. So if and when they decide to raise, we'll probably be one of the first ones looking at them.
Because I was just there yesterday at the actual. It's quite a diverse range of people. You have a lot of motivated people as well. I mean, a range of, pretty impressive. It's exciting. Things going on there. Quite exciting. The questions they were asking, quite a lot. Some of the questions they were asking were forward thinking as well. How are we going to raise capital the next 3 years?
Yes.
How's the market changing? Are we getting to a digital capitalization program, which is right up our alley as well?
Yeah.
But it was also quite almost inspiring, you could say, in terms of the style of problems they were trying to tackle across anywhere from renal to wearable devices to healthcare and things like that. So I do see you've got like a leg up as well with that. What's all that exclusive arrangement you have with them?
Proprietary access.
Yeah. And so with that in mind, what's success for you now, say in the next 5 years? So what do you hope to take this to in the next few?
Oh, it's very simple. So we want to help these companies grow and have meaningful outcomes. Meaningful outcomes is either list on the public markets or get acquired for a handsome sum by a strategic entity, deliver meaningful returns back to our shareholders, but at the same time, have this be an inflection point for commercialization of health-related technologies in this part of the world. It's been too long between the ResMeds, the Medtronics, the Cochlears. We think that Australia, Singapore, Japan can and should continue to lead the world in not only the generating of IP, but also the commercialization of IP. And in so doing, deliver venture-sized returns.
Great. And what are some trends you're seeing right now that's shaping the market? It's quite an interesting time we're going through with kind of aging populations, more purchasing power with women, move to wealth towards Asia, all the influence about AI in terms of combinators, in terms of who's getting funded right now.
Yes.
Multiples are getting attached to things with AI. AI mixed with mid are even getting higher multiples as well.
Yes.
Apart from the multiples about these two factors, what do you think are the real trends that are going to drive value for investors in the space?
Yes.
Not so much the perception that investors have right now about multiples. Not so much about that. I'm just talking about what you think is really going to drive value, and particularly industries over the next few years.
Yes.
So we're clearly bullish on this sector. Why? Because it ties back to, and it's nuanced, but we think it's important. And we think within health particularly, you can't drive returns without impact. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of, and we often see that in the screening process for the companies coming into the medtech actuator. There are a lot of interesting technologies being put forward. But when you ask, okay, where can that really be applied? What problem is that going to solve? How big is that problem? That's where some may not make it and come through because the impact is not there. The take-up rate might not be there. The ability for people to pay, the payer system might not be accepting of it, right? So we think that's going to be pretty important. Almost maniacal focus on impact is going to be important. You can't get away from the macro trends that are shaping the next few years. Not only the ones we talked about, the aging population and so forth, but we're seeing geopolitical trends shape. That's why we think the locus is migrating to our part of the world, which we think is a big opportunity. We're in the middle now of a technology super cycle. So the ability to build new next generation capabilities has never been more fertile. I have not mentioned AI deliberately because to us, AI will become electricity. AI will become fundamental to probably every business that comes through, every startup business that comes through, whether it's intentionally or in a more nuanced way. And what I mean by that is, if you look at some of the companies today, they're generating a significant amount of data. And in order to deliver that impact, you got to analyze that data and extract the insight from it, probably in a diagnostic. That's a perfect use case for a perfect AI use case. So most of the companies coming through right now are just AI native companies.
Yeah. And it's interesting, there's a difference between, look, there are so many agentic and like just the understanding that this is not a sector. AI is not really a sector, just like I like how you define it as a piece, it's an electricity that's powering
Yes.
businesses, sectors.
Yeah.
But I'm also seeing in the market just AI combined with medtech
Yes.
is ramping up valuation as well, just in terms of investor sentiment,
Yes.
as well as, like you said, the understanding that these two combined is going to create a large impact as well.
Correct.
And on the other side, I think it can create meaningful health outcomes as well. That seems to be really relevant what you guys are doing as well.
Yeah. And you're going to see the change in self. For a long time, there have been some structures that have remained true. You know, you wake up as a patient, you are not the expert. Your doctor is the expert. They have all of your data. They have all of your information. That relationship is changing now with the democratization of data and information, with the Dr. Google syndrome. So most patients going in today have much more of an informed position. They probably know more about their condition than the doctors do. And at the same time, access to your own information and be able to move that from one care provider to another in an effortless way is going to really transform the way care is provided. You talked about agentic AI, right? And we can spend the rest of this whole podcast talking about AI. However, the things that we are excited about is really the possibility for orchestration in the background on behalf of the patient in an agentic way. That's probably for another podcast. But that's going to transform the systems within which the capabilities that the companies that we are investing in are operating. That's going to make their capabilities even more effective.
Absolutely. Like I said, we could talk about this for hours, sort of, especially the various use cases for agentic in med and outside of it as well, and how it's going to affect our whole life.
Yes.
At the same time as well. But after this, where could people come to learn more about you? There could be a founder, investor, sort of alliance partner, just someone passionate about health and innovation.
Beautiful.
How do they find out more?
Yes. So a couple of places. And again, we'll put these in the show notes. Learn more about the medtech actuator, the medtechactuator.com. You'd see details about the program. You'd click on the portfolio link, and you can spend hours going through the incredible set of companies that are continuing to progress. You can learn more about the fund at synthesiscapital.com. And there you'd learn more about the thesis that we talked about earlier and the team and the journey we're on.
Yeah, and we're going to have some more, contact us options in conjunction with this podcast. So please put your name down or get your journey going with the organization, Synthesis Capital, so you can find out a little bit more. Last question. Look, it's been really fascinating, actually, but what simple question, what's really driving you? What's getting you out of bed in the morning to do this? This is obviously very impactful work. What's driving this?
Yes. So I left Salesforce about 18 months ago. And up until that time, I had spent better part of 3.5 decades running really hard. So it was the first time in my life I was able to take a pause, give myself a mini sabbatical to just up periscope and reassess. And what came to me was, this is my third chapter. Chapter 1 was about building fundamental skills through formal education. Chapter 2 was about really testing those skills in the workforce and refining it. I like to think about the fact that, everyone knows, not everyone, but most people know that LLMs these large language models that collect lots and lots of information. And then on the basis of that, you can start generating interesting things through Gen AI. To use an analogy, I think the last 30 years was about me building my own personal LLM, if I can use that analogy. And now what really excites me is the opportunity to generate something truly special through the combination of Synthesis Capital and the medtech actuator. You spent, Raghu, yesterday with those founders. Every time I go in there, I leave energized. Why? Because they are inspiring, they are purpose-driven, they're mission-focused, they're relentless, they're incredibly smart, and they have a chance. They have a chance to build something that can change the planet. And to be part of that is incredibly inspiring.
But what really brought you to Melbourne?
What brought me to Melbourne?
Yeah.
So my first tour of duty, I came to Australia in the mid-90s. So I mentioned I started my career at Boston Consulting Group. I was in New York, had a lot of interest in airlines. I was marketing myself as an airline specialist. So very quickly I got a call from a partner who said, hey, with a strong Australian accent. He said, hey, we got a case here in Australia. Do you want to come? That's my best Australian accent, so please bear with me. And I said, sure. So I came to Australia. I was in Sydney and commuting to Melbourne to do some work helping Qantas merge with Australian Airlines, which they had just bought. And I met a girl who's now my wife. So we moved to Boston. Our kids were born there. Yeah. And after 14 years together in Boston, she pulled out a marker that was an IOU that said, you have the option to move back to Melbourne. You can and she exercised the option. Yeah. And here we are. That was 15 years ago.
No regrets about this?
Oh, I love it here. It's a great place to live. There are a lot of similarities with the Caribbean. The love for sport, the outdoors, for enjoying time with people. It's an opportunity to rediscover cricket because they don't play cricket in America. They started to do now, but back then they didn't.
It'd be hard to live without cricket.
Our life now with cricket is so much richer.
Cool. I can imagine that. But you were also hanging out with Brian Lara for some time.
Yeah, so Brian and I were high school teammates. We played on probably about 6 teams together. He was just a little bit better than me. Yeah. But we've remained friends. He comes to Australia quite frequently. Whenever I go to Trinidad, we see each other. He's taken an interest in my son's cricket.
Is he passionate about medtech or?
He is passionate about having an impact. Yes.
How did you find that shift from consulting to being in business to being an investor?
It's a great question. I would say I always enjoy change. And I always enjoy what I would refer to, when you sit on an aircraft and you can feel the aircraft about to take off, and then the aircraft takes off, and for that period of time, you're still in that steep ascent. And that's probably the most exhilarating part of the ride, right? And I think changing from consulting to business to investing is those inflection points in your career that force you out of your comfort zone, that force you to learn, that force you to get your heart rate up, to get your spidey senses tingling, to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Because, there's a podcast that I discovered a few years back that's become one of my favorites now, and it's called Finding Mastery with Dr. Michael Gervais. He's a sports psychologist, used to work with Seattle Seahawks, Olympians, mixed martial arts, and business people. And he talks about the fact that you got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. That's back to the process to come full circle that we were talking about earlier. The link between elite athletes and elite businessmen and business people. The fact that professional sports is so far ahead than we are in the business world. The way an athlete approach their preparation, the level of intensity and preparation and diligence that they bring to that process. The fact that they have intentional rest and recovery. When's the last time you heard a business person say, I need to program in my recovery? Yeah. But you can't be an elite athlete if you don't have your proper recovery, whether it's your ice bath or your stretching or your hydration or whatever else. And they're not just fudging it, it's a system. So bringing that level of system into everything that we do is what excites me. Tying that, I enjoy the opportunity to play at the intersection of high performance sports, business, and health. Because I think that's a magical space that has some natural connective tissue and some overlap and some intersections.
Well, very interesting. So I also think now we'll move to some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
If you're good for that, Robert.
Let's see.
All right. These can be really...
So these are like fast bowling.
Fast bowling, and you can be... Yeah, I can be Ted Dulger, you can be Curtly Amber.
You want some short, sharp...
Oh, no, but I'm bowling, you're batting.
I can flash.
Here we are. So, what's one piece of technology you absolutely can't live without?
Wow, that's a good one. I would say in the last 6 months, it would be ChatGPT.
Cool. And if you could have dinner with any innovator or entrepreneur, dead or alive, who would that be and why?
Does it have to be one person?
I'm going to put two. Pick two if you want. Well, okay.
Oh.
Well, one would definitely have to be Nelson Mandela. Just because anyone that can go through what he went through is the definition of resilience. So I really want to understand how that works, just sort of to decode that. But I also want to spend time with Steve Jobs.
Well, and I'll unpack that. Why is that?
Because Steve Jobs, you can argue, created a device that has transformed the way we operate as humans. And I remember when he launched the iPhone, Obama said, this is the dumbest idea I've ever seen. You can look it up. Because the vision was not there. I know many people who had a similar reaction, like, why would I want to do all of this on my phone? Yeah. And now it's not really a phone. It is like having your own digital AI supercomputer in your pocket. Think about the transformation. If you were to have someone show up on your team today and say, I don't use a phone, you probably think you're not going to be able to work here. Yeah. Because you can't correspond with them. They can't do finances. They can't manage their logistics. Just that, to have that vision so early to see where the puck was going is remarkable, and to understand how he sees that. And then combine that with elegant design is really powerful.
And that word you've mentioned many times, impact, the impact that one person has had in the whole of human society.
Correct.
It's probably measurable, but I'm going to say it's immeasurable. All right, so now, is there any particular podcast or book that's really influenced your thinking recently?
Oh, there are quite a few. I'll hit you with a few. Speed. We talked about Finding Mastery. That's a great one. I like Adam Grant with Rethink. He's a organizational psychologist that talks about the fact that we should be prepared to rethink our positions in the face of stronger facts or superior logic. So that's really powerful. Books. The Denial of Death by Ernest Becker.
Okay. I don't know.
It's a little dense. However, he talks about the fact that as humans, we all have this underlying anxiety that can be dialed up and down, but it's there. And it comes from the fact that we all know that our clock is going to run out at some point. What separates us from the animals. And that drives hero behaviors. That's what compels some to strive and achieve and leave legacies and so forth. And in order to come to terms with that, gives you balance in your life and meaning. So it's an interesting read. It's been pretty impactful. Sapiens by Yuval Harari is another impactful book that I read.
Sorry, what's that?
Sapiens, Yuval Harari. It's a view on humanity, and he talks, quite provocative in fact, he talks about the fact that everything around us is really a fictional construct. It's a philosophical discussion, not unlike the Matrix.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, the Matrix.
Yes.
Not so different from some religious philosophies as well, about illusion and the world as well. But interesting stuff. Now, what's one thing you wish more startup founders understood?
That it's a journey, not a destination.
Good. And what's the biggest misconception people have about venture capital?
That is just about writing checks.
All right, fantastic. Looks, thank you so much, Robert. We've got Robert Wickham, who's a venture partner at Synthesis Capital. It's been extremely interesting. I've learned quite a bit from.
It's been a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Quite a bit of fun. I think anyone interested, look, I think we encourage you to reach out, and we'll try and establish that connection with Robert and the team as well. And I would also love to have you on a podcast about this, some updates in the market as well. I wouldn't mind doing that AI podcast.
Let's do it. Let's do it. You know, we're on a journey. Our aircraft is taking off.
Yeah.
And we would welcome anyone that wants to be part of the journey to join us.